It was supposed to be a quiet night at New York Mercy Hospital, just another routine checkup for a woman expecting her first child. But everything changed when her millionaire husband snapped and shoved her down a hospital stairwell. What he didn't know was that someone was watching. Dr. Ethan Brooks, the obstetrician on call, and the godfather who had once promised to protect her. That single moment would ignite a war inside the hospital walls, a battle between power, corruption, and one man's fight to bring the truth to light. You won't believe how far this goes until we dive in. Let us know what time you're listening and where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. It was almost 10 at night at New York Mercy Hospital. The hallways were quiet, lined with white lights that hummed softly above the polished floor. Nurses moved like ghosts between the patient rooms, their voices low, their shoes whispering against tile. Inside this calm, Isabella Carter sat near the maternity wing, one hand resting over her pregnant belly. She looked tired, but more than tired, worried. Her husband, Edward Kane, was pacing a few feet away, his phone glowing in his hand. The expensive suit, the perfect haircut, the calm mask of power, everything about him screamed control. But his eyes were restless. Isabella tried to smile. "You've been on that phone all day. Don't you ever stop working?" Edward didn't answer. He typed something, then slipped the phone into his pocket. When he finally looked at her, the warmth that used to be there was gone. A nurse walked by with a clipboard. "Mrs. Carter, the doctor will see you soon." Thank you," Isabella said politely. Her voice sounded small in the sterile air. Edward leaned against the wall, staring at the ceiling as if every second here was an inconvenience. She turned away, opened her own phone, and began scrolling to distract herself. That was when she saw it, a notification she didn't recognize. It was a message from the bank, a charge from the Moore Suites, one of Manhattan's most expensive hotels. The description read, "Executive Penthouse, Vanessa Moore." Her heartbeat slowed, then sped up again. She felt dizzy, her throat tightening. "Edward," she said quietly. He didn't look at her. "What?" She showed him the screen. "Why is there a hotel charge under your name? Who's Vanessa Moore?" The change in his expression was instant. He looked at her phone, then at her face, and smiled in that way that wasn't really a smile. "You went through my account?" "I didn't," she said, standing. "It just came through. I'm asking you a question." "You." He gave a short laugh. "You're imagining things again. Don't call me crazy." "Then stop acting like it." The nurse's station at the end of the hall went silent for a moment, as if the air itself could feel what was coming. "Edward, you've been lying," she said softly. "You leave early, you come home late, you turn your phone face down. I know what this means." He stepped closer, towering over her. "You don't know anything. Stop talking. I won't stop until you tell me the truth." "Nah." His voice dropped lower. "You want the truth? The truth is you've become a burden. Always crying, always accusing." She blinked back tears. "You think I wanted this fight? I wanted you to be here, to care about us, about the baby." He took another step forward. The space between them disappeared. "You'd better lower your voice." "Or what?" she said, shaking. "You'll hurt me again?" The word again made him freeze for half a second. Then his hand clenched. "You should be careful with what you say." Dr. Ethan Brooks appeared at the end of the hallway, carrying a patient file. He waved lightly when he saw them. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter, we're ready for." But Isabella didn't hear him. She was staring into her husband's eyes, realizing what that small flicker of rage really meant. "I can't do this anymore," she said. "I can't live like this." Edward's jaw tightened. "You're not leaving me. I'm not your property." He looked around. The hallway was empty now. Only the glowing exit sign above the stairwell flickered red in the distance. He stepped closer, whispering, "Don't make a scene. You'll regret it." She took a step back, toward the stairwell door. "You don't scare me anymore." The door clicked open slightly. Cold air rushed through. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then his voice came out low and sharp. "I said stop!" When she turned to walk away, he reached out. His hand caught her arm. She twisted, trying to pull free. The sound of struggle echoed through the narrow corridor. "Let go!" she cried. "Keep your voice down." She pushed against him, her palm striking his chest. He snapped. The shove was sudden, violent, full of the anger he had been hiding for months. She fell backward through the open stairwell door. The scream that followed cut through every hallway in the wing. Her body hit the metal railing, then the step, then the floor below. The sound was sickening. Flesh against steel, the thud of bone, the echo of pain. For a second, the world went still. Edward froze at the top of the stairs, staring down at what he had done. His chest heaved, his hands trembled. "Isabella," he muttered. "Get up." She didn't move. Blood began to trail across the tiles. Her hand reached for her belly, trembling. "The baby," she whispered. A nurse turned the corner, saw the scene, and screamed, "Help! Someone call trauma!" "You come." Edward rushed down, putting on his mask again. "She fell! Please help her!" Dr. Ethan Brooks sprinted toward them, eyes widening as he recognized Isabella. "My God, get her on a stretcher now." The nurses worked fast, voices blending into panic. Ethan knelt beside her, pressing gauze to her forehead. Her pulse was faint but steady. Her eyes fluttered open. "Ethan, I'm here," he said. "Stay with me." Edward hovered nearby, breathing hard, pretending to be desperate. "She slipped," he said again, but his tone cracked slightly. Ethan looked up at him, really looked, and something in his gaze changed. He saw the bruise that didn't match tonight's fall. He saw the fear that flinched every time Edward spoke. "Get her to trauma room 4, he ordered sharply. "Now." As the nurses rolled the stretcher down the hall, Edward stayed behind. His reflection appeared in the glass wall beside him, warped and broken by the light. He took a slow breath, smoothing his tie with blood-stained fingers. His whisper was almost inaudible, but you could feel it hang in the cold air. "No one will ever believe her." Far down the corridor, an old woman stood trembling beside a vending machine, her phone still recording. The red light blinked once, catching his face before it disappeared behind the closing door of the trauma unit. And in that single frame, justice quietly began to wake. The clock on the trauma room wall ticked past midnight. The air was sharp with the smell of disinfectant and adrenaline. Nurses moved quickly around the table where Isabella Carter lay, her body pale, her hair damp with sweat and blood. Machines beeped in uneven rhythm. Every sound echoed against the cold tile walls, as if the building itself was holding its breath. Dr. Ethan Brooks pushed through the door, his white coat flaring behind him. He had been in surgery when he got the emergency call, but when he saw the patient's name, his heart sank. He hadn't seen Isabella in years, not since she had married Edward Kane. Now she was here, unconscious, covered in bruises, carrying a life that was barely holding on. "What happened?" Ethan asked sharply. "She fell down the stairs," one nurse answered, moving aside. He looked at the husband standing near the wall. Edward's suit jacket was off, his sleeves rolled up, his expression practiced. "She slipped," Edward said, his voice shaking just enough to sound real. "One second she was beside me, the next she was on the floor. Please, doctor, you have to help her." Ethan didn't answer right away. He leaned over Isabella, his hands steady as he checked her pulse. Her breathing was shallow. The cut on her forehead was deep but clean. Her arm had started to swell, but what caught his eye were the marks on her shoulders, faint purple streaks that didn't come from a single fall. "Get me her vitals again," he ordered. His tone was calm, but something in his eyes had changed. Edward stepped closer. "How bad is it?" Ethan straightened up slowly. "I need you to wait outside. I'm not leaving my wife." "This is an emergency room, Mr. Kane. You are in the way. Wait in the hall." Edward's jaw tightened, but the doctor's voice left no room for argument. He hesitated, then turned and walked toward the door. The moment he stepped out, Ethan exhaled, focusing again on the patient. "Pressure is low," a nurse said. "Prepare saline. Let's stabilize her before we do anything else." The team moved in sync, cleaning the wounds, checking the baby's heartbeat, monitoring oxygen. The rhythmic beeps from the fetal monitor finally steadied, soft and fragile like a whisper of hope. After 30 minutes, Isabella's eyes fluttered open. Her vision blurred under the bright lights. She tried to move, but Ethan pressed a hand gently on her arm. "Don't try to sit up. You're safe here." Her lips trembled. "Ethan?" He smiled faintly, though his voice stayed calm and professional. "You gave us a scare. You fell pretty hard." Her gaze darted around the room until it landed on the glass window where Edward stood outside, staring in. She froze. Her pulse began to rise. "Easy," Ethan said softly. "You're safe. He's not coming in." "You—" Tears filled her eyes. "He's lying," she whispered. He pushed me. Ethan's face didn't change, but his eyes darkened. Are you sure? She nodded weakly. He told me I'd regret everything. He was angry. Then I fell. Ethan lowered his voice. Has he hurt you before? She hesitated, then turned her face away. Please don't ask me that. That was enough of an answer. Ethan stood straight. Rest. I'll take care of it. He walked to the door and stepped into the hallway. Edward was there pacing. Is she going to be all right? She's stable for now, Ethan said flatly. But we need to run some tests. Edward exhaled in relief. Thank God. Ethan studied him for a moment. You said she slipped. Where exactly did this happen? In the stairwell near the maternity wing. The floor was wet. It wasn't, Ethan replied quietly. Edward blinked. What? I checked it myself before coming in. For a moment, the two men just stared at each other. One calm, one calculating. Edward forced a small smile. Are you accusing me of something, doctor? Ethan crossed his arms. No, just making sure I have the facts right. Edward stepped closer. You might want to focus on saving her instead of judging me. Ethan didn't flinch. I already am. The silence stretched. Then a nurse appeared, holding a clipboard. Doctor, the lab results you asked for. Thank you, Ethan said. He turned slightly, his tone colder. You can wait in the family lounge. I'll send someone if anything changes. Edward wanted to protest, but stopped himself. He adjusted his tie, forcing a calm smile. Of course. When he was gone, Ethan opened the file. The blood work showed no signs of medication or fainting spells, nothing that could have caused a fall. It confirmed what he already knew. This wasn't an accident. He walked back into the room. Isabella was awake now, holding her stomach. The baby? She asked weakly. The baby's heartbeat is strong, he said. You're both safe for the moment. Her eyes closed in relief. Then she whispered, He's going to come back. Not tonight, Ethan said. I'll make sure of that. He pulled a chair beside her bed and sat down. Listen to me, Isabella. I need to ask something important. Has he done this before? She looked at him for a long time before nodding. Sometimes when he gets angry, I try to calm him down, but it never stops, Ethan finished for her. She started to cry. I didn't want anyone to know. He said no one would believe me. Ethan reached for a tissue and placed it in her hand. Someone will. You told the right person. Outside the glass window, Edward stood talking to the head nurse, pretending to be the worried husband. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Every few seconds, he glanced toward the room, making sure she was still there. Ethan watched him through the reflection. He didn't say a word, but the decision was already made in his mind. As he turned off the overhead light, the monitor beeped softly in the dark. Isabella's breathing slowed, calm again. The hospital felt quiet once more. But the peace was an illusion. Because in that silence, Ethan Brooks began planning how to expose Edward Kane, and how to make sure Isabella and her unborn child would never face his hands again. The hallway of New York Mercy Hospital was quiet again, but it was not the same kind of quiet as before. This silence carried something hidden, something watching. The fluorescent lights hummed above the empty corridor near the maternity stairwell. A faint trace of blood still marked the edge of the step where Isabella had fallen. It had already been cleaned once, but under the white light, a shadow of red remained. Down the hall, Linda Parkers sat in her wheelchair near the vending machine. She was a patient recovering from hip surgery, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a stubborn streak. She had seen too much in her life to ignore her instincts. That night, she had heard a scream, followed by the sound of someone falling. When she looked through the narrow glass window, she saw a man kneeling over a pregnant woman, whispering something that made her skin crawl. So she did what few people would have done. She recorded it. Now, with trembling hands, she replayed the clip on her phone. The image was shaky, grainy, filmed through a gap in the curtain, but it was clear enough. Isabella lying at the bottom of the stairs. Edward's voice sharp and cold. Get up now! Linda covered her mouth. Lord have mercy, she whispered. She pressed save, but her thumb slipped. The phone almost fell from her hand. She caught it just in time. Her heart was racing. She looked down the hall. It was empty, or so she thought. A figure appeared at the far end, walking slowly toward her. It was Edward Kane. He looked calm, but there was something wrong about his calmness, something too controlled. His eyes scanned the floor, the walls, the corners, as if searching for something. When he spotted Linda, he smiled. "Good evening," he said politely, his voice echoing softly in the corridor. "You were here earlier, weren't you? Near the stairwell?" Linda's pulse quickened. She nodded cautiously. "I heard someone fall, Len." He stepped closer, hands in his pockets. "Yes, my wife. Terrible accident. She is stable now. You didn't happen to see anything unusual, did you?" Linda hesitated. "No, sir, just the fall." His eyes lingered on her phone. "I noticed you had your phone out." Her grip tightened around it. "I was calling for help." "Of course," he said, smiling again. "May I see your phone? I think I left a message on the hospital line, and I want to be sure it went through. It will take only a second." "You." She shook her head. "I'm sorry, I can't. I'm not supposed to share my device." Edward's smile faded slightly. "It's a simple request." The light above flickered. For a moment, his face looked different, sharper, colder. Linda shifted in her chair. "I'm just a patient, sir. Maybe you should talk to security." Edward exhaled, forcing a laugh. "You're right. I'm tired. It's been a long night." He turned, pretending to leave. She watched him go, relief spreading through her chest. But when she looked down again, her phone screen had gone black. The reflection in it showed movement behind her. She turned just in time to see him coming back. Before she could react, his hand shot forward, grabbing the phone from her lap. "What's this?" he asked, voice no longer polite. "Give it back!" Linda shouted. He scrolled quickly, seeing the video thumbnail, his face twisted. "You recorded me!" "You pushed her," she said, her voice trembling. "I saw it with my own eyes." "No." He leaned down, close enough that she could smell the faint trace of cologne mixed with sweat. "You don't know what you saw." "I know what I heard," she replied. He held up the phone. "If you want to keep that hand steady, you'll forget this video existed." She didn't back down. "It's too late. I sent it." He froze. "What did you say?" "I sent it to my daughter before you got here." Her voice was shaking, but she forced herself to look him in the eye. "She works for the local news." In 3, his jaw tightened. The phone in his hand suddenly felt heavy. He pressed the power button, saw the upload icon, and cursed under his breath. "You have no idea what you just did." He hurled the phone against the wall. It shattered. The screen went black. From down the hallway, the elevator bell dinged. Dr. Ethan Brooks stepped out, holding a stack of reports. When he saw Edward standing over Linda, he stopped. "Mr. Kane," he said evenly. "Everything all right here?" Edward straightened, smiling again. "This woman got startled. I was trying to calm her down." Ethan's eyes moved from Edward to the broken phone on the floor. "That's an odd way to calm someone." Linda looked at Ethan, tears in her eyes. "Doctor, please." Edward cut in smoothly. "She's confused. I think the medication is affecting her." "Enough," Ethan said sharply. He stepped forward. "Go back to your wife's room. Now, me." Edward hesitated, then brushed past him. "Of course, doctor. I only wanted to help." When he disappeared around the corner, Ethan knelt beside Linda. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head. "Not hurt, just shaken." "Did he take something from you?" Her eyes filled again. "My phone. It had the video." Ethan frowned. "What video?" "The fall," she whispered. "I recorded it. I saw him push her." Ethan's stomach tightened. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "I swear to you, I saw everything, but I told him I sent it to my daughter. He believed me." Ethan helped her stand and motioned for a nurse. "Get her to a safe room. Stay with her. Don't let anyone else near." As they left, Ethan picked up the broken phone and examined it. The screen was cracked, but he could see a faint icon in the corner, "Upload complete." He slipped it into his pocket and walked toward the security room. The guard looked up, surprised when Ethan asked for the hospital surveillance footage from the maternity wing. The man frowned. "That's strange. The system was reset about an hour ago. Every file from tonight's shift is gone." Ethan's hand tightened around the broken phone. "Who authorized that?" "Mr. Kane," the guard said. "He's one of the hospital's private donors. He said it was a security issue." Ethan turned without another word. The hum of the lights followed him down the hall. He didn't stop until he reached Isabella's room. She was asleep, her breathing soft, her hand resting over her stomach. He stood by her bedside, the broken phone glowing faintly in his palm. In the silence, he made a promise, one he intended to keep. No more accidents. No more hiding. Whatever Edward Kane thought he erased tonight, Ethan Brooks would bring back to light. Morning light crept through the blinds of Dr. Ethan Brooks's office, painting thin stripes across the floor. The hospital was quieter now, but the tension lingered like a bruise that refused to fade. Ethan had not slept. The broken phone sat on his desk, the cracked screen still showing the faint icon of an upload. He had spent the entire night thinking about what to do next. He knew the moment he confronted Edward Kane, things would escalate. The man was dangerous, manipulative, and connected. But he also knew Isabella had finally whispered the truth. She said he pushed her, and now there was proof, even if it was fragile. He picked up the phone and dialed a number he had not used in years. "Sarah, it's Ethan." The voice on the other end was sharp but calm. "It's been a while. What happened?" "I need you at Mercy Hospital right now. Domestic abuse. The husband's powerful, the wife is pregnant, and I believe he tried to kill her." A pause. Then, "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Yentry?" He hung up and exhaled. Outside, the city was waking up, but inside the hospital, the storm was only beginning. By the time Sarah Chen arrived, the hallways were flooded with morning light. She was wearing a tailored navy suit, her dark hair pulled back neatly, her expression focused. She walked with a kind of confidence that made people step aside without knowing why. Nurses watched as she passed, whispering to each other. Ethan met her outside Isabella's room. "Thank you for coming so quickly," he said. Sarah nodded. "You said the husband's name was Edward Kane?" "Yes. He's a real estate mogul, owns 3 development firms, and donates heavily to this hospital. That's how he got access to the security system. He erased the footage from last night." Sarah's brows furrowed. "But you have something else." He held up the broken phone. "A patient named Linda Parker recorded part of it. Edward tried to take the video, but she managed to upload it before he could destroy it." Sarah looked impressed. "Smart woman. Where's the wife now?" "Resting. She's stable but terrified. He's been hovering around her room since dawn. I told the nurses not to let him in." Sarah's eyes sharpened. "Then let's talk to her before he finds another way in." They entered the room quietly. Isabella was sitting upright in bed, pale but alert. Her eyes widened when she saw the woman in the suit. "Mrs. Carter," Ethan said gently, "this is Sarah Chen. She's a lawyer who specializes in protecting women in your situation." "No." Sarah offered a small, reassuring smile. "You don't have to say anything you're not ready to say. I'm just here to help you understand your options." Isabella's hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the blanket. "Does he know you're here?" "Not yet," Sarah said, "and it's better if he doesn't. For now." There was a long silence. Then Isabella whispered, "He'll find out. He always does." Ethan stepped closer. "He won't this time. Not if we move quickly." Sarah sat beside the bed. "I need to ask you something difficult. Has your husband hurt you before last night?" Isabella hesitated, then nodded slowly. "He doesn't always hit. Sometimes it's words. Sometimes it's threats. He tells me no one would believe me, that people see him as the perfect man." Sarah's voice softened. "You are not the first woman to hear those words, and you will not be the last. But men like that always make one mistake. They think control is permanent." "Jean." Isabella looked at her, unsure whether to believe it. Sarah continued, her tone steady. "If you agree, we can file an emergency protection order within 24 hours. The video your neighbor recorded will help. So will the medical report Dr. Brooks is writing." Isabella's lip quivered. "He'll ruin me. He'll ruin all of us." Ethan shook his head. "He can't ruin the truth." Before Isabella could answer, there was a sharp knock on the door. All 3 froze. The handle turned. Edward stepped in. He was still in the same suit from the night before, but his tie was gone. His eyes were bloodshot, his expression carefully composed. "What's going on here?" he asked, scanning the room. His gaze landed on Sarah. "Who are you?" Sarah stood, meeting his stare without flinching. "Sarah Chen, legal counsel for Mrs. Carter." Edward's eyes narrowed. "My wife doesn't need a lawyer. That's for her to decide," Sarah replied evenly. He looked at Isabella. "Did you call her?" Isabella couldn't speak. Ethan stepped forward. "I called her. She's here to ensure medical and legal protection. That's standard procedure when a patient reports abuse." Edward's jaw flexed. She didn't report anything. She fell. Sarah's tone was ice. There's a video that suggests otherwise. His eyes snapped toward her. What video? Ethan cut in. It's under review. Edward took a step forward, his voice low. You're making a mistake, Doctor. You're involving yourself in something that's not your concern. Sarah moved between them. You should leave before you say something you can't take back. He glared at her. Do you know who I am? Yes, she said, her voice sharp as glass. A man who's running out of people willing to protect him. The room went silent. Edward's mask cracked for the briefest second. Then he forced a smile. You'll regret this. Sarah smiled back. No, Mr. Kane, you will. Yen. Ethan stepped to the door and gestured. Security will escort you out. Edward stared at them both, then turned and walked out, slamming the door hard enough to make the IV stand rattle. For a moment, no one spoke. The only sound was Isabella's shaky breathing. Sarah turned to her. He's scared. That's good. It means he knows he's losing control. Isabella looked down at her hands. What happens now? Sarah leaned closer. Now we start building the case. And this time, Mrs. Carter, you're not alone. Outside, through the narrow hospital window, Edward stood in the corridor, watching them with cold eyes. His reflection stared back from the glass, a man cracking under the weight of his own lies. And somewhere deep inside the hospital, in the maintenance hallway, a single red light blinked on a hidden backup server, quietly confirming what he had tried to erase. The video still existed. The hospital at night looked different. The bright, sterile corridors from the morning were now half-lit, filled with long shadows and quiet echoes. A thin rain tapped against the tall glass windows, leaving streaks that glistened under the emergency lights. Somewhere deep inside the maternity wing, a secret was still breathing. Linda Parker moved slowly down the corridor, her footsteps soft against the floor. The nurse had just helped her from her room back to the patient lounge. She said she felt better, but her heart was racing. The image of Edward Kane leaning over his wife's body still haunted her. She had told Dr. Brooks everything, but she could not rest. She kept thinking about the video. She reached into her robe and touched the spare phone her daughter had mailed her the week before. She had sent the original video file to her daughter that morning, just in case. The phone Edward broke was a decoy she had used since last night. She knew he would come back. Men like him always did. The hallway was empty except for the hum of machines. She turned the corner and froze. Edward was standing by the water cooler, his hand in his pocket, his expression calm and polite. Mrs. Parker, he said smoothly, you should be resting. Her throat went dry. I was on my way back. He took a step forward. I wanted to apologize for last night. I overreacted. I was scared for my wife, and I may have frightened you. Linda clutched the phone tighter. You didn't frighten me, Mr. Kane. He smiled. Good. Then we can forget what happened. I already have, she lied. Edward's eyes shifted to her hand. That's a new phone. She hesitated. My daughter brought it this morning. He nodded slowly. May I see it? I can help you set up the hospital Wi-Fi. Her breath quickened. That's not necessary. The politeness dropped from his voice. Give me the phone, Mrs. Parker. No. No. He stepped closer, his shoes tapping softly against the floor. You are making this harder than it needs to be. You are an old woman who saw something she shouldn't have. You don't want to be dragged into this mess, do you? Linda's heart pounded in her ears. I did the right thing. Edward's jaw tightened. There is no right thing when it destroys people's lives. Hand it over. She turned to run, but he grabbed her wrist. The phone fell to the floor and slid under a chair. She screamed, the sound sharp and desperate. A nurse came running from the end of the hall. What's going on? Edward released her immediately, straightening his jacket. She tripped. I was trying to help her up. Linda clutched her wrist, trembling. He attacked me. The nurse looked between them, uncertain. Mr. Kane, please step back. I was helping, he said firmly. You can check the cameras. There are no cameras in this section, the nurse replied. Edward smiled faintly. Then I suppose it's your word against mine. The nurse helped Linda back into her wheelchair. I'll call security. Don't, Linda said quickly. Please just take me to Dr. Brooks. Edward watched them leave, his jaw tight. His mask slipped for only a second. Then he turned and walked the other way, pulling out his phone and making a call. Do it, he said. I want her transferred to another floor by midnight. Make it happen. In his office, Dr. Ethan Brooks sat at his desk with Sarah Chen. The rain tapped against the window behind them. Papers were scattered everywhere. Medical reports, legal drafts, and the broken phone that once held the first recording. Sarah looked tired but focused. He's getting desperate. That means we're close. Ethan nodded. Linda confirmed he attacked her again. She said he tried to grab her new phone. Sarah frowned. Does she still have it? Yes. She hid it with the nurse before coming to me. Sarah exhaled slowly. Good. That video is our leverage. Once I file the motion for emergency protection, we can request a court order for arrest. Ethan rubbed his temples. We need to keep them both safe until then. I've already arranged for Isabella to be moved to a private recovery wing. No one but me and the charge nurse knows the location. Sarah looked up. Does Edward know she's being moved? No, but I think he suspects something. Yurao. At that moment, a nurse burst into the office. Her face was pale. Dr. Brooks, we have a problem. Mr. Kane is at the security desk. He's demanding to see Mrs. Parker. He says she's delusional. Ethan stood. Where is she now? In her room, under observation. Sarah grabbed her briefcase. We're going there. If he tries anything, I'll have grounds for a restraining order before morning. They hurried through the hallways, their footsteps echoing against the tile. The air felt thick, heavy with tension. As they turned the corner, they saw Edward standing outside Linda's room, arguing with a nurse. His voice was raised, the charm gone. I have every right to know who's spreading lies about me, he said. Sarah stepped forward. No, you don't. Edward turned, eyes narrowing. You again. Mr. Kane, Sarah said evenly, you are violating patient privacy and hospital protocol. Leave now, or I'll call law enforcement. Sneered. You think you scare me? I think I'll ruin you, she said quietly. The nurse opened the door, revealing Linda sitting inside, clutching her arm. Doctor, she whispered when she saw Ethan. He knows about the transfer. Edward's smile faltered. Transfer? Ethan glared at him. You're done here. Security arrived seconds later, 2 guards stepping between Edward and the door. Sir, we need you to leave. Edward took a deep breath, forcing a calm smile again. Of course, I'll go, but this isn't over. Sarah watched him disappear down the hallway. Her voice was low but steady. He's right about one thing. It's not over, but next time, he'll be the one in restraints. Ethan turned to Linda. Are you all right? She nodded. He won't stop until he's caught. He will, Sarah said. We're done waiting for him to make another move. It's time we make ours. She looked at Ethan. Get the police report ready. I'll contact Detective Moore. By the time the sun rises, Edward Kane will have nowhere left to hide. Outside, thunder rolled over the city. Inside the hospital, the lights flickered once, then steadied again. In that brief flash of darkness, every person in the room understood the same thing. The hunt had begun. The hospital was silent again, the kind of silence that makes you feel like something is watching. Rain still fell against the tall windows, streaking down like tears. The lights were dim, and most of the staff had gone home for the night. Only the hum of machines and the faint echo of voices from the night shift broke the stillness. Isabella Carter lay awake in her hospital bed, staring at the ceiling. Her room had been moved to a private wing under Dr. Ethan Brooks's orders. The curtains were drawn, the lights low. She tried to sleep, but her mind wouldn't let her. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the stairs, the moment she fell, and Edward's voice telling her to get up. Her hands trembled as she reached for the water glass beside her bed. Her phone vibrated suddenly, its faint buzz cutting through the quiet. She looked at the screen. Edward Kane. For a few seconds, she couldn't breathe. She thought about ignoring it, but part of her needed to hear his voice, to know what came next. She pressed answer. Edward. Her voice was barely a whisper. He sounded calm at first. Too calm. I'm glad you picked up. You scared me tonight. She said nothing. You should have told me where they moved you, he continued. I was worried. You shouldn't be calling me, she said softly. Not after what happened. What happened? His tone hardened. You fell. It was an accident. Everyone knows that. She gripped the phone tighter. You pushed me. He laughed quietly, the kind of laugh that didn't sound human. You always twist things. You've been emotional lately. Pregnancy can do that. Tears filled her eyes. Stop pretending. There are people who saw. Who? That old woman? She's confused. No one will believe her. She recorded you." There was a pause. Then his voice changed completely. The smooth tone vanished. What came next was sharp, dangerous. "You think that matters? I can make things disappear, Isabella. I can make people disappear." She froze, heart pounding. "If you come near me again, I'll tell the police." "You think they'll listen?" he said softly. "You're my wife. You depend on my money, my name, my protection. You'd be nothing without me." Her breath caught. "You're wrong. I already told them what you did." There was silence on the line. Then the sound of his breathing. "You shouldn't have done that," he whispered. "You have no idea what's coming." The line went dead. Her hand shook as she lowered the phone. The room felt colder, the air heavier. She pressed the call button for the nurse. Within seconds, the door opened, and Nurse Hamilton rushed in. "Mrs. Carter, are you all right?" "He called me," Isabella said, her voice shaking. "He said he's coming." The nurse's face paled. "I'll alert Dr. Brooks right away." Ethan arrived minutes later, his white coat thrown over his shoulders, eyes alert despite the hour. "What did he say?" Isabella repeated the conversation, every word making his anger grow. He grabbed the phone from her bedside. "He's threatening you now." "That's enough." Sarah Chen entered the room just as he finished speaking. Her hair was tied back, her suit slightly wrinkled from another sleepless night. "I came as soon as I got your message," she said. "Tell me what happened." Ethan handed her the phone. "He called her. He knows the transfer location." Sarah's expression hardened. "Then he's not just angry anymore. He's panicking." "He said she would regret reporting him," Ethan added. Sarah nodded. "Good. We have what we need. The call log, the voicemail, the timestamp. I'll send it to Detective Moore right now." Isabella looked between them, fear in her eyes. "He said he's coming here." Sarah placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "He won't get near you again. I promise." "Sarah," Ethan said quietly, "we need a restraining order tonight." "I already filed the paperwork," she replied. "But we need to record his threats. Do you mind if I leave your phone on the line? It will trace if he calls again." Isabella nodded. "Do whatever you need." Sarah connected the phone to her laptop, the glow of the screen reflecting in her eyes. "Detective Moore is already listening from the station. He'll have a warrant ready within the hour." Ethan exhaled. "Good. Then we wait." The three of them sat in silence. The hospital lights flickered once. A thunderclap rolled in the distance. Isabella finally spoke. "Do you think he'll stop?" Sarah looked at her. "Men like him never stop, they only get caught." A faint vibration broke the stillness again. The phone lit up on the table. The name appeared, Edward Kane. Sarah motioned for quiet and hit record. She put the call on speaker. "Hello?" Isabella said, her voice barely steady. Edward's voice came through, colder now. "You think you can hide from me? I know where you are. You can't keep our child from me." Sarah typed silently as he spoke. Ethan watched the signal trace appear on the laptop screen. "Edward," Isabella said carefully, "I don't want to fight anymore. Please just leave us alone." "I'm your husband," he hissed. "You don't tell me what to do. You don't get to decide when this ends. You're scaring me." Good," he said. "You should be scared, because I'm already here." The line went dead. Sarah's head snapped up. "What did he say?" Ethan moved to the window. His voice was low. "He's in the building." The nurse burst back into the room out of breath. "Doctor, security just called. Mr. Kane's car is in the parking lot." Sarah grabbed her phone. "Call Detective Moore now. Tell him to lock down every entrance." Ethan turned to Isabella. "We're moving you to the lower level. There's an emergency wing with reinforced doors." She struggled to sit up. "I can't move fast." He helped her into the wheelchair. "I've got you. Just breathe." As they rushed down the hallway, alarms began to sound. Red lights flashed along the ceiling. The sterile white corridor was now bathed in crimson. Nurses shouted instructions. The sound of rain was drowned out by sirens. Ethan pushed the chair faster, Sarah running beside him. "He's losing control," she said. "That means he's dangerous." "He was always dangerous," Ethan replied. Behind them, a door slammed somewhere down the hall. The echo was loud enough to make Isabella flinch. She turned her head and saw a shadow move across the far wall. "Keep going," Ethan said. "Don't look back." They reached the elevator to the lower level. Sarah pressed the button. The doors opened with a soft chime. They stepped inside. As the doors slid shut, The last thing Isabella saw through the narrow gap was Edward's reflection in the glass window across the hall, watching them with a look that chilled her blood. He had found her again, and this time he was not leaving quietly. The storm outside had grown violent. Rain lashed against the hospital windows, and wind howled through the narrow gaps in the glass. Inside, red warning lights flashed across the corridors. The sound of sirens echoed through every hallway, mixing with the distant rumble of thunder. Dr. Ethan Brooks pushed Isabella's wheelchair as fast as he could, his shoes slipping on the polished floor. Sarah Chen ran beside him, clutching her phone and shouting into it. "Detective Moore, he's inside the building. Lock down every exit now." The voice on the other end crackled through static. "We're 5 minutes out. Hold your position. Keep her safe." Ethan turned a corner, scanning for the emergency elevator that led to the underground recovery wing. "This way!" The elevator doors were open, waiting. A nurse held them wide as the group rushed inside. "He came through the loading dock," the nurse said breathlessly. "Security tried to stop him, but he knocked one of them out." Isabella's hand tightened around the armrest. "He's going to kill me," she whispered. Ethan crouched beside her. "He's not getting near you, I promise." Sarah's phone buzzed. She looked down. A message from Detective Moore read, "Do not engage. Wait for us. He's armed." She looked at Ethan, her face pale. "He has a weapon." The elevator jolted as it began to move. The sound of thunder outside grew louder, like the world itself was warning them to hurry. When the doors opened on the lower level, they were met with silence. This wing was used for emergency evacuations and private recovery. Only a few nurses worked here. The long corridor stretched ahead, lined with metal doors and dim blue lights that flickered overhead. "Room 14, Ethan said. "It's secure." They entered quickly. Ethan locked the door and moved to the console to engage the reinforced shutters. Metal panels slid down over the small window with a heavy clang. Isabella sat trembling in the wheelchair, her breath uneven. Sarah knelt beside her. "You're safe here," she said softly. "He can't get in." But even as she said it, the hospital intercom crackled to life. The voice that came through made Isabella's blood run cold. "Isabella," Edward's voice said, calm and chilling. "You can't hide from me." "No." The intercom hissed with static. "They're lying to you. They want to turn you against me. You're my wife. That baby is mine." Sarah slammed her hand against the wall. "He's using the hospital system." Ethan looked up from the console. "He hacked into the staff network. He must have forced someone to give him access." The intercom clicked again. "If you want her to live, you'll tell me where she is." Ethan shut off the speaker, his face hard. "He's close." Sarah grabbed her phone. "Moore, do you copy?" "He's using the internal PA. He's in the lower level." "Understood," Moore replied. "We're breaching the south entrance in 2 minutes. Stay hidden." 2 minutes felt like forever. Ethan turned off the room lights and whispered, "Stay quiet. Don't move." The hallway outside was silent at first. Then came the sound of footsteps. Slow, deliberate, the squeak of wet shoes against tile. Isabella's heart pounded so loud she thought he could hear it through the door. Sarah moved to the side, ready to defend if needed. A shadow passed under the door. The handle turned once, then again, harder. Edward's voice came through, low and full of menace. "I know you're in there." Ethan pressed a hand against the door, holding it shut. The sound of metal scraping came from the other side. He was trying to pry it open. "Edward, stop!" Isabella shouted through the door. "Please, just leave." Her words only fueled him. "You lied to me," he snarled. "You think these people care about you? They want to use you to destroy me." Ethan looked at Sarah. "He's going to break the lock," Sarah whispered. "We need to move her now. The service tunnel connects at the end of this corridor." Ethan nodded. "On my count." The door rattled again. The lock groaned under the pressure. The sound of metal bending filled the room. "1," Ethan whispered. "2, 3. He flung the door open just as Edward slammed into it from the other side. The impact sent him staggering backward. Ethan pushed the wheelchair through the doorway while Sarah followed, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. Edward caught his balance and saw them running. "Isabella!" he shouted. His voice echoed through the hall. The chase began. They sprinted down the dim corridor, the emergency lights flashing red with every second. Ethan pushed the wheelchair faster than he thought possible. Sarah turned around once and saw Edward gaining on them. His eyes wild. his shirt soaked from the rain. A door ahead opened suddenly. 2 security guards appeared, but Edward swung a metal bar, knocking one to the ground before the other could react. The man's radio clattered across the floor. "Go!" Sarah yelled. "Don't stop!" Ethan pushed the chair toward the tunnel door at the end of the hall. He punched the access code into the keypad. The light turned green. The heavy door slid open. "Inside!" he shouted. Sarah helped Isabella through. As the door began to close, Edward lunged forward, his hand slipping through the gap. Ethan kicked it shut with all his strength. The sound of his hand slamming against the steel was followed by a roar of pain. The door locked with a click. They were safe. For now. Inside the tunnel, the air was cold and smelled of dust. A faint light flickered above them. Isabella was shaking uncontrollably. "He's insane," she whispered. "He's never going to stop." Sarah knelt beside her. "He will. The police are on their way." Ethan leaned against the wall, breathing hard. "We're taking her to the secondary trauma wing. It connects to the east exit. Moore's team will meet us there." He looked at Sarah, his voice low. "If he gets through that door, run. Don't wait for me." She met his gaze. "We're not leaving you behind." From behind the door came the faint sound of pounding. Edward was still there, his rage echoing through the metal like thunder. In the distance, sirens wailed again, louder this time, closer. Ethan placed a hand on Isabella's shoulder. "It's almost over. Just hold on." The pounding stopped. Silence fell. Then came Edward's voice, soft but terrifying. "You can't hide forever." Sarah turned to Ethan. "We need to move now." They began down the tunnel, the echo of their footsteps mingling with the storm outside. The air grew heavier with every step. Up above, on the hospital's main floor, Detective Daniel Moore and his team burst through the entrance, weapons drawn. The storm had come inside, and it was far from over. The tunnel stretched ahead like a steel vein running through the bones of the hospital. Every sound echoed. The wheels of the chair rattled against the concrete floor. The air smelled of dust, oil, and electricity. Somewhere behind them, the faint thud of metal against metal reminded them that Edward Kane was not far. Dr. Ethan Brooks led the way, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. Sarah Chen followed close behind, her phone pressed to her ear. "Detective Moore, we're in the lower tunnel. He's trying to break through the service door." Moore's voice came through the static. "Stay calm. We're almost there. You'll see our lights soon." Ethan glanced back at Isabella. "You're doing great. Just keep breathing." Her face was pale, her hand pressed to her stomach. "He's not going to stop." "He will," Sarah said firmly. "Not after tonight." The tunnel split ahead into 2 corridors. Ethan hesitated for a moment. The power flickered, and the lights above them blinked weakly. "We take the left. It leads straight to the east wing." As they turned, a loud metallic crash echoed from behind them. The sound bounced through the tunnel walls like a scream. Isabella gasped. "He's inside!" Ethan's flashlight flickered once, then died. They were plunged into darkness. "Keep moving," Sarah whispered. "Go by the wall." Ethan guided the wheelchair with both hands, his breath loud in the silence. His pulse pounded in his ears. He had seen fear before, but never like this. He knew Edward's kind. He knew what they were capable of when cornered. A faint light appeared at the far end of the tunnel. Flashlights, the FBI team. Relief flooded through him, but then another light appeared behind them, closer, brighter. Edward's voice echoed through the darkness. "Isabella!" The single word froze everyone. He was walking slowly, the beam of his flashlight shaking slightly as it cut through the dust. "You can't keep running from me," he said, his voice calm and terrifying. "You're my wife. You belong with me." Ethan shouted, "Stop right there." Edward laughed softly. "Dr. Brooks, you think you're her savior, don't you? But you don't understand. She's mine." Ethan stepped in front of the chair. "You've already lost." Edward raised his arm. In his hand was a piece of metal, jagged and shining. "No one takes her from me." Sarah's phone rang loudly in the silence. The sound startled everyone. She grabbed it quickly. "More! He's here! He's armed!" Edward's voice rose, echoing through the corridor. "Put that phone down!" "Do it, Sarah," Ethan said quietly. "Get the location through." She kept the line open and stepped slightly to the side. "He's between the main tunnel and corridor B. Move fast." "And do I." Edward moved closer, the the flashlight's beam hitting Ethan's face. "You think you can stop me, doctor? You think a piece of paper or a lawyer makes you brave?" Ethan's voice stayed calm. "No, the truth does." Edward lunged forward. Ethan pushed the chair back and met him halfway. The two men collided, the sound of struggle filling the tunnel. The flashlight fell, spinning across the ground. Isabella screamed. "Ethan!" Edward swung the metal bar wildly, hitting the wall. Sparks burst from the impact. The noise was deafening. Ethan grabbed his arm, twisting it. The bar clanged to the floor. Sarah rushed forward, kicking it away. "Stop it!" she yelled. Edward shoved Ethan back, panting, his face twisted with rage. "You ruined everything!" "Look around you," Sarah said sharply. "You did that yourself." He turned toward her, eyes full of fury. "You think I'm the villain? She made me do this." Isabella's voice cracked through the air. "No, Edward. You did this because you wanted control. Because you couldn't stand someone telling you no." Her voice was stronger now, echoing through the tunnel. For the first time, Edward hesitated. "You hurt me," she said. "You hurt our child, and now everyone knows." The flashlight flickered again, and in that light, Edward's face looked hollow, broken. "I loved you. You don't hurt what you love." The sound of boots echoed from the far end. Flashlights appeared, bright, steady, advancing. Edward stepped back, shaking his head. "No, no one takes me down." Ethan moved to shield Isabella again. Sarah shouted, "FBI! He's armed!" Before anyone could move, Edward turned and ran down the opposite tunnel. The beam of his light swung wildly. Moore's voice echoed from the other end. "Stop! Drop the weapon!" Edward didn't stop. The agents fired a warning shot. The sound thundered through the tunnel, bouncing off the walls. Edward stumbled but kept running until he reached a dead end. He turned, breathing hard. The metal door in front of him locked tight. Moore's team closed in, flashlights blinding him. "Edward Kane, put it down!" Edward's arm shook. The bar clattered to the floor. He dropped to his knees, his voice breaking. "She lied to me. They all lied." Ethan arrived moments later, his clothes torn, his face pale. He stood beside Sarah and Isabella, who was now safe in the chair again. Moore looked at him and nodded. "It's over." Edward lifted his head. "It's never over," he said weakly. Moore gestured to his men. "Cuff him." The metallic click of handcuffs echoed like punctuation to the nightmare. Edward's eyes found Isabella one last time. "You think you've won, but you'll always be mine." She looked at him with tears in her eyes, but her voice was steady. "No, Edward, I'm finally free." The agents pulled him to his feet and led him down the tunnel. The sound of his footsteps faded into the distance. Ethan turned to Isabella, his voice soft. "It's done," she nodded, closing her eyes. "It doesn't feel real." Sarah placed a hand on her shoulder. "It will, tomorrow." The tunnel lights flickered once more, then steadied. Outside, the storm was dying. As they wheeled Isabella toward the exit, Moore walked beside them. "He'll face trial," he said. "You did the right thing." Isabella looked ahead, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just wanted it to stop." Ethan smiled faintly. "It has." Vrid. When they emerged from the tunnel into the pale light of dawn, the rain had stopped completely. The city skyline shimmered in silver mist. For the first time in months, Isabella Carter felt something she thought she had lost forever: peace. 6 months later, the city of New York was bathed in winter light. Snow dusted the courthouse steps like powdered glass, and the air was sharp and cold. Inside, the marble halls of the federal court were filled with reporters, lawyers, and the faint murmur of anticipation. The case of the state of New York versus Edward Kane had captured national attention. A millionaire businessman accused of domestic abuse, financial fraud, and attempted murder. The story had everything the media loved: power, betrayal, and a woman who refused to stay silent. Isabella Carter sat quietly beside her attorney, Sarah Chen. Her hands were clasped in her lap, her body still fragile but her eyes calm. She was 7 months pregnant now. The baby moved often, a reminder that life had survived even the darkest night. Across the aisle sat Edward Kane, wearing an orange prison uniform. His once perfectly styled hair was uneven. The arrogance that had defined him for years was gone, replaced by a hollow expression. But his eyes still burned when they met Isabella's. The judge entered. "Court is now in session." Everyone rose. When the judge spoke again, her voice was firm. "We are here to determine sentencing for Edward Kane, found guilty on all charges after a full trial by jury." Edward's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, my client maintains that this was a tragic accident, not an act of malice. He has cooperated with authorities and deserves leniency." The prosecutor, Assistant District Attorney Ramirez, rose from his seat. "Your Honor, the defendant's history tells another story. Repeated violence, threats, manipulation, financial control. This was not an accident. It was a pattern, and it almost cost 2 lives." The judge nodded. "Proceed with the witness statements." Sarah rose from her chair. "Your Honor, we call Dr. Ethan Brooks to the stand." Ethan walked forward, his posture straight, his white coat replaced by a gray suit. He took the oath, and Saturday, Sarah approached the podium. "Dr. Brooks, please describe what you witnessed the night of the incident." Ethan's voice was steady. "When Mrs. Carter arrived at the hospital, she was bleeding from a head wound and had multiple bruises inconsistent with a simple fall. Her husband claimed she slipped, but the injuries told a different story. Later, I learned that a patient had recorded the fall. It was clear from that footage that Mr. Kane pushed her." Sarah nodded. "Did Mr. Kane attempt to interfere with that evidence?" "Yes," Ethan said. "He bribed hospital staff to delete the security footage and later attacked the witness who recorded the video." Gasps filled the courtroom. The judge struck her gavel once. "Order." Sarah turned. "No further questions." The defense attorney stood quickly. "Dr. Brooks, you have a personal relationship with the victim, don't you?" Ethan met his eyes. "I was her doctor. I protected my patient. That's my only relationship." The defense attorney smirked. "Nothing further." Ethan stepped down. Sarah stood again. "Your Honor, we call Linda Parker to the stand." Linda entered slowly, leaning on a cane. The courtroom hushed. She had become an unexpected hero in the media, the woman whose courage changed everything. Sarah smiled gently. "Mrs. Parker, could you tell the court what you saw?" Linda adjusted her glasses. "I was waiting near the elevator when I heard shouting. I looked down the stairwell and saw Mr. Kane push his wife. She fell hard. He walked down after her and told her to get up like it was her fault." The defense lawyer objected. "Speculation." The judge shook her head. "Overruled. Continue." Linda's voice trembled. "I knew right then that she needed help. I recorded it on my phone. When he found out, he tried to take it from me, but I had already sent it to my daughter." Sarah nodded. "That video was later verified and presented as Exhibit A. Is that correct?" "Yes." "Thank you, Mrs. Parker. No further questions." As Linda left the stand, she passed by Isabella's table. Their eyes met, and Isabella mouthed, "Thank you." Linda smiled faintly and sat down in the gallery. Sarah turned back to the judge. "The prosecution rests." The defense attorney rose again. "Your Honor, my client wishes to make a statement." The judge hesitated, then nodded. "Proceed." Edward stood slowly. His wrists were cuffed. His voice was low and cold. "I never meant to hurt her. I loved my wife, but she turned everyone against me. She made me lose everything. The media destroyed my name. My own family disowned me." Sarah interrupted. "You destroyed yourself, Mr. Kane." He glared at her. "You think this ends with a sentence? You have no idea who I am." "Yes." The judge struck her gavel. "That's enough, Mr. Kane." He sat down, breathing hard. The courtroom felt like it was holding its breath. The judge spoke again, her tone grave. "The evidence presented leaves no doubt. The defendant acted with intent, malice, and complete disregard for human life. The court hereby sentences Edward Kane to 30 years in state prison with no possibility of parole for the first 20. The gavel fell. The sound echoed like thunder. Reporters began to whisper. Cameras flashed. Edward's shoulders slumped as guards moved to escort him away. But before they reached the door, he turned back toward Isabella. For a moment, the courtroom seemed to vanish. Only the two of them existed. He said nothing. His eyes spoke instead. The same look of control, pride, and fear. Then he was gone. Sarah exhaled, her voice soft. "It's over." Isabella nodded slowly. Tears slipped down her cheeks. She hadn't realized she had been holding her breath until now. The judge called for recess, and the courtroom began to empty. Ethan approached, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said. She smiled weakly. We did it. Reporters shouted questions, but Sarah blocked them, guiding Isabella toward the side exit. Flashbulbs popped behind them like tiny explosions. Outside, the air was cold and clean. Snow was falling again, soft and slow. Isabella stood on the courthouse steps and closed her eyes. For the first time in years, she felt peace instead of fear. She placed a hand on her stomach. The baby kicked gently. "Justice," she whispered. "You're safe now." Ethan and Sarah stood beside her, watching the snow fall. In the distance, the police van carrying Edward Kane disappeared into the white haze of the city. The storm was finally over, and somewhere deep inside her, hope began to grow again. The winter had passed. The snow that once covered New York had melted into silver puddles on the streets. The city was waking up to spring. In the distance, the Hudson River shimmered under a pale morning sun, calm and endless. Inside New York Mercy Hospital, the same place where everything had fallen apart, the air felt different now. The walls were still white, the floors still polished, but the heaviness that once hung in the air was gone. It had been 3 weeks since the trial ended. 3 weeks since Edward Kane was sentenced to 30 years in prison. And today, Isabella Carter was back in the same hospital, but for a different reason. She was in the delivery wing. Her contractions had started at dawn, gentle at first, then stronger with each hour. The nurses moved quietly around her, adjusting machines, checking monitors. The scent of antiseptic mixed with the faint aroma of flowers from a small vase by the window. "Doctor." Ethan Brooks stood at her bedside, calm and focused. "You're doing great," he said softly. "The baby's heartbeat is strong." Isabella nodded, breathing through the pain. "It feels strange being here again," she whispered. "This place used to scare me." Ethan smiled gently. "Not anymore. This time, it's where your life begins again." She closed her eyes, letting his words settle. He was right. The same corridors that once echoed with fear now carried something else. Hope. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, spilling golden light across the bed. Sarah Chen arrived mid-morning, carrying a bag of baby clothes and a calm energy that filled the room. She leaned over and kissed Isabella's forehead. "I couldn't stay away," she said. "You're about to meet your reason for everything." Isabella smiled weakly. "You were my reason too. You both were." Sarah laughed softly. "Save the gratitude for after. Right now, focus on breathing." The contractions grew sharper. Ethan watched the monitors, his voice steady and kind. "Almost there. One more push." Her fingers gripped the rails of the bed. Pain burned through her body, but underneath it, she felt something else. Strength. The kind that comes only from surviving everything you thought would destroy you. Minutes later, the room filled with a cry. High, small, but strong. The sound cut through everything. Ethan lifted the newborn gently, his hands sure and careful. The baby's skin glowed in the morning light, her tiny fingers curling around nothing yet holding the entire world. "It's a girl," he said, smiling. Tears spilled down Isabella's cheeks. A girl. Ethan placed the baby in her arms. The world seemed to stop. Isabella looked down at the fragile life resting against her chest, her heartbeat matching the rhythm of the child's. "Hi, my love," she whispered. "Welcome home." Sarah wiped her eyes. "Have you chosen a name?" Isabella nodded slowly. "Hope. Her name is Hope." The baby stirred, making a soft sound that felt like the universe exhaling. Hours passed in quiet peace. The chaos of the outside world faded away. The trial, the fear, the memories, they all belonged to another lifetime now. Nurses came and went. The sunlight shifted across the walls. Isabella drifted between rest and waking, her daughter sleeping on her chest. Later that evening, Ethan returned to check on them. Sarah was sitting by the window, reading a legal file but smiling every few seconds at the baby. "You're both doing well," Ethan said. Isabella looked up at him. "Thank you for everything." He shook his head. "Don't thank me. You saved yourself. I just stood beside you." She smiled. "Sometimes that's all someone needs." He checked the monitor one last time, then turned to leave. "Get some rest. You both deserve it." When he was gone, Sarah leaned forward. "You know he cares about you, right?" Isabella laughed softly. "He cares about everyone." Sarah shook her head. "Not like that." Isabella looked down at her baby, then out the window. The city lights had begun to glow. "Maybe one day she said quietly. But for now, this is enough. Night fell slowly. The hospital halls outside were peaceful. The sound of footsteps, soft conversations, and distant heart monitors formed a lullaby of life. Isabella sat up slightly, watching her daughter sleep. She thought about everything that had happened. The violence, the fear, the fight for truth. All of it had led here, to this tiny heartbeat against her skin. She whispered, "You were worth everything." Outside, snow began to fall again, light and delicate, melting the moment it touched the glass. Sarah stood and stretched. "I'll be back in the morning. I'll bring coffee and that ridiculous stuffed bear you liked." Isabella smiled. "I'll hold you to that." Sarah paused at the door. "You did it, Isabella. You turned pain into something beautiful." When she was gone, Isabella looked down at her daughter again. "Your father won't hurt anyone anymore. The world can be cruel, but it's also kind when you fight for the truth." The baby stirred, tiny fingers grasping the edge of her mother's gown. Isabella kissed her forehead. "You'll grow up knowing what strength means. You'll know that love isn't supposed to hurt." Zen. The room was warm, filled with soft light and the steady rhythm of the heart monitor. She closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the peace she had chased for so long finally reach her. When she opened them again, the first hint of dawn was glowing through the window. The city was waking. Cars moved below, lights flickering like fireflies. Somewhere far away, a church bell rang. Dr. Ethan returned quietly with a folder. "Paperwork," he said with a smile. "Birth certificate." She signed it carefully, writing the name slowly, almost reverently. "Hope Carter." Ethan glanced at the paper and nodded. "Perfect name." He looked at her for a moment, then at the child. "You've come a long way, Isabella." She smiled through tired eyes. "I had help." He placed the file on the table. "Rest. You've earned it." When he left, she looked once more at the name written in ink. Hope. Outside, the morning sun rose fully, washing the hospital in gold. The light reached her face, soft and pure. She whispered to her daughter, "The worst is over." The baby sighed in her sleep, and in that small sound, Isabella Carter knew her story had finally changed. It was no longer about fear. It was about survival, courage, and the love that outlasts every shadow. It was about the light that always returns, no matter how long the night.